This is a program to discuss progress in different areas of Walailak University in Nakhon Si Thammarat, Thailand, covering different areas such as teaching and learning, research, and other students' activities. Today, we are very fortunate to have a very distinguished researcher at our university, Associate Professor Dr. David Harding, who works at the Department of Chemistry at this university. I am Surin Maisikrot, Vice President for Global Engagement and Faculty Development. Professor David, could I start with asking you about your research area?
Yeah, okay, so I do quite a bit of research. I moved to Walailak in 2004, which is amazingly 16 years ago now. And my research really centers around transition metal complexes. These are basically small little compounds that we make. They have a metal center and then they're surrounded by sort of organic shrubbery, okay? And the particular area that we're interested in is the magnetism of these complexes. So some of these compounds show very unusual magnetic behavior. So one sort of class of compounds, these are called spin crossover compounds, and you can think of this as a bit like an electric switch. So effectively what's going on is that the molecule, as we change the temperature, goes from an off position to an on position. And the idea here is to make that transition from the off state to the on state as abrupt as possible and have something called magnetic hysteresis. All that means is that we can store information in that molecule, okay? And this might be a way of replacing some of the technologies that we currently use to store data in your mobile phone or your computer's hard disk. Another series of compounds are called single ion magnets.
So this is basic research, but it does have implications for public in general, really.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question it does. I mean, all of our research is, fundamental research, but I think fundamental really, suggests that the research is not interesting, it's not useful, and that's untrue. A lot of fundamental research, especially stuff like what we do, is at the frontier of human knowledge. So we're actually trying to push that boundary and ask questions about, is it possible to do that? Can we do this? And these are sort of the questions that we're trying to ask. And so we do have an application for our materials in mind, but it is true that it's long in the future. But the technologies that we use today were actually invented 30 or 40 years ago in the lab. So the problem with any country not doing frontier research is that we don't develop new, areas of knowledge. And that means that when it comes to the tech companies and the engineers, they've got no new knowledge on which to build, on which to make new things that we use day to day. Even things like the 5G technologies that are being rolled out were invented, some decades back. So we absolutely need to continue to invest in new knowledge and new findings in science if mankind is to move forward as a species.
And you are very widely published, internationally published. I must emphasize the fact that you are one of the top researchers at this university. How important is it about international collaborations when it comes to research and publications?
Oh, I think there's no question that international collaboration is central to our research effort. Working in a comparatively poor country means that certain high-end techniques and whatnot are not available in the whole country. And so we absolutely have to collaborate internationally. But it's good for us, and in fact it's good for our international collaborators as well. We all learn something from each other in the course of the collaboration. And that's what all collaboration is really about. You know, you join together, you have a common interest, something that, you know, both sides of the collaboration want to see come to fruition.
And I guess,
it's working together.
and I guess listening to your people listening to you, they must have guessed that you must be from the UK, and obviously you must have collaboration with your colleagues in the UK and in other countries, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have collaborators now in the UK, in the US. We have collaborators in France, Spain, Australia, New Zealand. We have collaborators in Singapore as well, and we've got collaborators really, honestly, all around the world. There's a lot of international interest in the type of research that we're doing, and you know, and our breadth of collaborators, you know, simply reflect that.
And what sort of, I'd like you to comment on research environments in perhaps at this university in Thailand and perhaps in Asia, you know, comparatively speaking.
Yeah, I mean, the university here at Walailak, our facilities are simple, but, you know, our particular lab is absolutely amongst the best equipped, you know, in the country. It really is an exceptional space. It's a place that, in fact, my wife and I designed together, you know, for our research. And, you know, we try to include international safety standards and all these kind of considerations into the design of the lab. So absolutely, our lab space is as good as you will find, you know, anywhere in the world. It really is an exceptional piece. I think for Thailand, the challenge always is that lack of, you know, truly high-end equipment that is present in more developed, you know, research ecosystems. But we do have to remember that Thailand has only really been doing research in a very serious way for probably about 30 years or so, whereas in places like Europe, these places have been doing research for hundreds of years, and so they're starting from a much stronger foundation than we are. Thinking more broadly in terms of Asia, right now, you know, Japan is, and perhaps has been, traditionally, you know, the strongest country in Asia. That's beginning to wane now, and in fact, Singapore and China are now, you know, amongst the strongest, you know, research ecosystems. Singapore's research ecosystem, though, is very small because it is a city-state. China, on the other hand, is very large, and we see in all the world rankings, you know, the rise of China. I mean, like 10 years ago, there was something like 50 universities in all of China that were ranked by things like the Times Higher Education, and that number has now at least doubled. And it's, you know, we absolutely see now in things like the Asia rankings that the Chinese universities are amongst the best in our region. And that's because the Chinese state has been investing very significant sums of money. It's also encouraged foreign scholars to come into the country, you know, to work there and to bring their expertise and to train up the next generation, you know, of Chinese researchers. And I think this is an area the Thai government, you know, needs to work on as well.
Professor, listening to you, it's quite clear that actually being a top researcher, being a very well-published person, having international collaboration, establishing lab that is internationally standardized. We are talking here about internationalization. We are talking, part of my responsibility as a VP for global engagement is to internationalize this university. But what you are doing, it actually is pretty much at the center of internationalization. You know, could you comment on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, you know, everybody tries to bring their own particular thing to any university, and in fact, it doesn't matter in that way whether or not you're Thai, you're British like I am, or you know, you might be from elsewhere in the world. You know, you bring that certain unique thing that makes you you, and you're able to bring unique collaborations. I think the most important thing really is to not be fearful. You know, there are too many Thai researchers who are sometimes a bit intimidated by the international community and so on. And there's no need to be. Honestly, they're very, very, you know, nice people.
That's very encouraging to hear that.
You know, and the reality is that many of them actually want to collaborate with people in Thailand. They're interested to collaborate with us, but they simply lack that opportunity to do so. So I would certainly encourage Thai researchers, get out there, go to conferences, you know, meet other people. Don't just stay with your close group of friends that you've known each other since high school and stuff like that, or since university. Go out and meet new people, and you will absolutely find that the international community is waiting to work with you. It wants to work with you, but it can't unless you make that first move.
It's very encouraging to hear that. Well, you've been here for 16 years, and you must have taught a lot of students, you know, maybe thousands of students have gone through your courses and all of that. And in your school, the School of Science, they're always top-notch students. Would you comment on the quality of both undergraduate students and graduate students of here at Walailak University?
Yeah. The School of Science is very fortunate. We have something called the DPST Center. This is a program initiated by the Thai government to basically get smart students into science. Because it has traditionally been the thing that if you're a smart student, you must become a doctor in Thailand. If you don't become a doctor, then perhaps a pharmacist. And if you don't become a pharmacist, perhaps, you know, you might become an engineer. Science tended to be rather low on the rung, you know. But in fact, for our society and so on, we absolutely need scientists as well as engineers, and indeed other people. So you need smart people in every field. And the DPST program provides scholarships for very smart students to study the sciences. And so we've been lucky enough to have those students come through the School of Science. And, you know, they're just so much more ambitious, and, you know, they really are smart students. And we've been lucky enough to train some of them, you know, in our lab. And we currently have two overseas. One is at the University of Manchester, and the other is Southampton University in the UK. And, you know, and they're both doing some really, you know, interesting work there. But there's no question that if they hadn't come to Walailak University, if they hadn't met us, they wouldn't have gone perhaps to those universities. And so there's an immense sense of pride for me that, you know, I've had a positive influence on some of these students and the careers and whatnot that they elected to choose for their future. And I think that for any academic, really, that's ultimately your main goal. Your main goal is to make a difference in somebody's life.
Right. And Professor Harding, we at Walailak University, we are very ambitious about getting on the list of the world-class university. And you've seen publications, you have seen research projects, you've talked to researchers here, and we have actually submitted to Times Higher Education for the impact ranking to be ranked by the Times for that category. Two questions here. First, why world ranking? Secondly, given the situation here, you think we are too ambitious about that?
Yeah. I think there's no such thing as too ambitious. You know, you have to be ambitious, because if you don't be ambitious, then you just give up, and that's not a good place to come from. But why world rankings? It's important for any university to get a sort of an idea of where it is in the world and how it's doing compared to its peers, and more importantly, how it might improve what it's currently doing. Okay, so that's one of the main reasons for submitting to the world rankings. The first one you mentioned is the impact rankings, and this really is measuring the university's commitment to the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. So this includes things like ensuring that the university provides a quality education, ensuring that the university is working with partners to reduce waste, consumption, making sure that the water in a local area is clean, and all these kind of things. So, it again goes back to that fact that the aim of the university is to have a positive impact on, the local community and the international community as well. And so we're working, towards that, those goals, and I think we really have to be.
Perhaps you have some stats leading us to that, confirming that it is possible.
The interesting thing about the impact rankings is that any university who submits will get ranked.
What about the other one?
But the other rankings are not like that. So there are two other big rankings that are recognized around the world. And this is the Times Higher Education World University Rankings and the QS World University Rankings. At the moment, these rankings depend quite significantly on the university's research output. So we're talking here about things like how many papers per faculty member, what are the staff to student ratios, what are our sort of citation numbers, who are our international collaborators, how large is our international research network, these kind of questions.
How are we performing on the publication side?
On the publication side, Walailak has done very well.
Very well.
In the last, sort of 2 years. So in 2019, the university outputted just less than 220 publications. As things stand today, it's 355.
And given the fact that we are not very big university, we have about 500 plus staff, and then about 8,000 students. So I assume we are doing very well.
Yeah, there's no question that for a university the size that Walailak is, and also how young it is, we have to remember that although the university was founded in 1992, it was another sort of 5 years before we actually had any physical buildings and any students. So in that sense, the university is really only about sort of 23 years old. So for such a young university, we're doing well, but it's going to be a long ride, and it's going to be a question of continuous effort over many years to improve our publication numbers, improve our international presence, which will, improve our citation numbers and so on. And all of these will help the university, to become ranked in the future.
I like your point about being ranked is actually a form of benchmarking with international standards, to see where we are, not only across the country, across Asia, but also across the world. So I feel very encouraged about this, because I think we are on the right track. We are putting a lot of emphasis on internationalization of this university, which means that we actually want to internationalize every aspect of this university, including teaching and learning facilities, the teaching and learning framework. We have adopted the UK PSF, United Kingdom Professional Standards Framework, and of course research publications and all of that. So I feel very encouraged. The fact that we are benchmarking ourselves against international standards, which something we can't avoid, I think.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. There's, again, every university has to pick its own standards and own benchmarks that it will choose, and there's no question that in some of these we will do very well. In other areas we'll still have work to do. But in a sense, if you don't get a score, then you don't perhaps realize how you're currently doing. and then that hopefully gives you the impetus to improve yourself. But at the end of the day, it's not really about, oh wow, I scored 150 out of the 600 universities that were ranked. It's more about, is the university providing quality education for the students? Is the university ensuring that it's supporting its staff into doing the best research that they can do, given the sort of certain limitations that are present, not only within our university but within the nation. If you can do that, and if you like, adopt best practice in all of those different areas, then you can see the whole aspect of the university changing and improving. And that's why having these international benchmarks is really useful for a small place like our university, so we can perhaps change certain things when we see that some of the things we're doing are perhaps not delivering the outcomes that we would like, or we learn of a better way to do things that we can see from our international neighbours. Oh, they're doing that, we're doing this. Oh, that would work well for us. Because the other thing to remember, I think, is that every university is unique. And in fact, the impact rankings in particular is about that. It's actually celebrating the uniqueness of each university, rather than saying every university has to be the same. Every university has to be producing, 10,000 publications a year that, that are in science and nature and stuff like this. They're actually trying to say, okay, who are you as a university? What do you focus on? In Walailak's case, we provide a significant service to our local community. We saw this recently in the flooding situation last week. It's amongst the worst flooding that Nakhon Si Thammarat has experienced in the last decade, and the university was able to sort of pull together its resources and help the local community, to get through the worst of the flooding. There's still more work to be done, as always, and we need to think, how we can stop that from happening in future years.
Talking about Nakhon Si Thammarat, which is located about 800 kilometers south of Bangkok, and you've been here for 16 years, coming from the UK. Why here?
Well, I mean, there are a number of different reasons. Amazingly, I grew up somewhere almost exactly like this. I grew up in a tiny village. The nearest village was about 2 miles away. It had about 500 people, but my local hamlet was 30, and my family was 6 of that 30. So we were 20% of the population. Before I moved to Walailak, I actually worked for a little bit in Bangkok, and my wife and I were thinking about, would she move up to Bangkok or would I move down here? And I took the view that Bangkok was full of people, and and that I grew up in the countryside. My wife grew up in the countryside, and we thought, for our kids, that's what we want. We want them to grow up, in the beauty of nature. And
we are very grateful for that indeed, because I think you have contributed a lot to this university, and the fact that we are going for international ranking, being a top researcher at this university, it's very, very certainly that is a great contribution that you have made over the years.
Yeah.
And so I guess and one of the things, of course, you're playing a very important part in, helping raising the standards of this university to meet international standards. And you maintain contacts with your friends still in the UK, in Australia, in the US, in other countries, leading a way for other Thai academics to follow suit, I guess, because as you say, we need to encourage more Thai academics to be participating in international, academics, scholarly research. they are quite capable academics, Thai, but maybe they are not very familiar with international environment and things like that. So, so I think that's a very important point. I think people would be very encouraged to hear that, just go out there, basically, to seek international collaboration. And it's very interesting because, the fact that we have produced, as you mentioned, very well in terms of publications, publications in Scopus indexed journals in Q1 and Q2. A lot of, a very high percentage of our staff publish in quartile 1 and quartile 2 Scopus indexed journals, and that's very encouraging for this otherwise rather new university. And as you said, we are 29 years old, but I accept your calculation actually, given the starting years. So basically we are actually 23 years.
Yeah. I mean, we're a lot younger in that way, in terms of our physical presence. And and of course that means that there's lots to do. But I can remember what the university was like all those years ago. And when I first moved to the university, there really was nothing. There was just sort of like a little bench top, a few beakers and stuff like this. And then, my boss sort of telling me, okay, do something with this. And so it was absolutely very hard in those first years. There's no question the university is better prepared now to support, its staff as they embark on research than it was in the past. And I think that's a testament to, to the improvement that we have seen in the university overall.
I'm glad
is there more to do?
Absolutely. I'm glad to hear that, because I'm part of the new administration which has come to take this responsibility about four years ago. So I'm very happy to hear that actually that you think we are promoting, the new administration is promoting very heavily research and things like that. So, well, I hope people who have listened to Professor David Harding today would enjoy his views. And I really, certainly, as a Thai, I really appreciate his presence here. I think Professor Harding's presence at this university has contributed in a very significant way to the high standard of this university. So I enjoy talking to you, Professor, and I hope people who have watched this program would certainly share my view. And so thank you very much for appearing on the program. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.